Well, welcome everybody to the poster session. And hopefully at this point, you've heard from panelists, you've heard from each other and engaged in conversation, heard from Caesar Singh and Dr. Hampshire. And we're glad that you're here and we're glad that you're engaging in this conversation. We'd like to thank the UTCs that have provided information and files and poster session information that's going to be shared with you next. In the Q&A, I'm going to add a link to our website where the list of all of the UTCs who submitted information are listed, along with links to their presentations and other documents. We are going to go in alphabetical order just because it seems like that's probably the easiest way to manage going through the list. And we're going to ask everybody to try to stay to 5 minutes if possible. And it looks like first up is going to be University of Pittsburgh. It looks like Dr. Cooper is on the line, and I'm going to stop sharing so you can start sharing.
Okay, there we go. Nikita, you want to share the presentation?
Sure. Just pulling that out.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Rory Cooper. I'm the director of a brand new center focused on accessible and autonomous vehicles and mobility services for people with disabilities. Next slide, Nikita. Nope. So we have just completed the Gray literature, scientific literature systematic review, and submitted that for publication. And we've learned some interesting things about the people understanding the levels of autonomy, the need for engaging end users. Most of the studies have engaged older adults. We are now moving into our voice of the consumer, voice of the provider, and journey mapping phase, where we're reaching out largely to manufacturers, to end users, older adults, travel companions, drivers training instructors, mobility equipment modifiers. We'd be happy to get support from any of the other UTCs and helping to cast as wide a net as we can, because we're trying to get a broad population of both manufacturers, providers, and consumers with disabilities and older adults. And then later we're going to do data synthesis using machine learning and AI techniques, and then even do some solid modeling to provide some guidance on how accessible autonomous vehicles can be designed. Because the little pie chart on the side shows some of the importance of these items to people with disabilities in a survey that we already conducted previously, showing that both general driving assistance and self-driving vehicles are extremely important to individuals with disabilities to provide them access to healthcare, employment, and participating in communities. Next slide. This is just kind of an overview of our systematic literature search. We've actually just completed that, submitted for publication. Next slide. Over 1,000 items were found. This all, though, when we got it down to the relevant aspects of the literature for our study and for our center, there was 27 scientific papers and 34 papers in the Gray literature, basically mostly government reports. Next slide. So unfortunately, most of the data is on older adults, not so much on the broad population of people with disabilities, which is something that we need to address moving forward. And we need to look at the entire journey. Much of the research has been done on the vehicles themselves, and a lot of them are Wizard of Oz studies and not actual autonomous vehicle studies. And that technology needs to be shaped to pay or tailored to the preferences of people with disabilities. And then this type of data is really needed to provide guidance for both policy and planning, both technology and infrastructure. And there are significant gaps currently. One of them, for example, is the SAE structure really looks only at the vehicle, not the entire trip or the accessibility portions, and really only the autonomous aspects of the vehicle. So these are some of the research gaps, themes that we've identified, and we'll be exploring further. Next slide. And these are our key policy implications. One of them will be that universal design and participatory action design and engineering principles are needed for developing AV vehicles and services, as well as the built environment. And this really needs to involve our persons with disabilities as important stakeholders, including these other stakeholders we've got listed here. We also need to look at policy or payment of these services, as many people with disabilities don't have large financial means. And so they might have to look at benefits, state and federal coverage, various voucher systems, and how they would be impact on the use of AVs and how that would impact the medical care, employment, and education outcomes. As we look at driver's license requirements, especially if we look at like level 2, level 3, level 2 vehicles, level 3 vehicles, and also look at the effect of autonomous vehicles on physical and mental health and social determinants of society at large. Next slide. So we're looking to provide a roadmap for manufacturers and transportation systems providers that are responsive to the needs of people with disabilities. I think that's it. Next slide. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper and Nikita, for moving us through the slides. Next up, we have Center for Advanced Transportation Mobility, Dr. Liu.
Oh, hello. Hello, Lisa. Dr. is not available now, so I will present this slide.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kai. I'm happy to be here with Chen Tao to show our work. The topic is learning to evacuate machine learning enabled emergency dispatching and dynamic airspace configuration. Okay, here we go. So as we all know, the hurricane is the most common disaster in the southeastern United States. Typically, people will choose to evacuate by driving their cars before the hurricane lands. However, such a process always causes transportation crises because of a large-scale evacuation and the limited transportation resources. At this case, taking flight to evacuate looks a better choice to alleviate this issue. Therefore, we proposed the flight dispatch system and the emergency, which aims to add additional flights serving for evacuation, will minimize the air traffic control complexity. So sounds a bit abstract, right? Okay, let us see an example. Suppose a hurricane will attack Miami, but there are very limited number of aircraft can be used to evacuate people. So what should we do now? Absolutely, we can let other available aircraft in other airports support the evacuation. Some can take off from the New York City, pick up people in the Miami, and then go to LA. So we name such a travel the potential evacuation flight. The target of our system is to select the best match between the available aircraft and the potential evacuation flights. Our system is built on the joint machine learning models, specifically the predictive model based on the neural network and the planning prototype based on reinforcement learning. In the other words, all dispatch plans are learned from the historical data. Okay, next, I just show a part of results and give a brief explanation. Please look at the left table and the picture. It shows our air mobility prediction model achieve the best performance than other commonly used machine learning models. The air mobility here means the airflow and the average delay of each aircraft and the average taxiing time in the each airport. And on the basis of this accurate estimation, our planning framework generates more balanced dispatch plans, which is shown by this blue bar in the right two figures. Only contrary, if we only consider the flight length and the flight time, more evacuation flight will take off from or go to Atlanta or Charlotte, since they are the two closest airports for Miami. On the contrary, if we only consider the workload, less more flights fill this too, because they are also the busiest airports in the United States. The other question is, whatever how balanced the dispatching plans are, the evacuation flights will cause actual workload for the air traffic controllers. So we therefore further study how to reduce the workload as much as possible. Chen Tao will continue to introduce our related work about it.
All right, so I'm sorry, I was muted. Yep, this is Chen Tao. Here I'm gonna talk about the dynamic airspace configurations with response to the emergency evacuation. So with the impact of the global warming, we have the extreme weather such as hurricane is going to hit the East Coast more often. So especially in Florida. Based on the emergency dispatching scheme Kai just talked, we're able to increase the redundancy of our current evacuation policy. The short-term and long-term effects of such aircraft fluctuation in the national airspace could be well investigated. However, in our current national airspace design and the traffic management, the static airspace configuration is still popular adopted in the processing of increasing complicated air traffic. So in response to such a traffic load changes, the dynamic airspace configurations has been proposed in 2007 for designing a more flexible and redundant airspace. So currently, for the designing airspace reconfiguration algorithm still facing a few challenges, such as the workload of the air traffic controller, the high densities of the aircraft in some specific airspace, such as some extremely busy airports in Atlanta, Miami, and Los Angeles. Third part, like large air traffic fluctuation, and it also increase the operation delays of the flight. Large traffic transition between the ARTCC boundaries. And then constraints for design for the existing dynamic airspace configuration algorithms. It could be the reconfiguration complexities on reducing the operation delay, the aircraft transition complexities, and the air traffic volumes within air traffic volumes complexities with specific design, goes from specific design to the other kinds of configurations of the airspace. Fourth part, the traffic patterns complexities. For example, if we are looking into the future national aerospace design, we could have the unmanned aerial vehicle be involved in the airspace configuration. This could make the traffic patterns become more complicated. Next slide, please. So in our work, we want to investigate the first part of the air traffic controllers workload. We want to investigate this part in the airspace configuration at first. The first thing is we want to balance the workload between the different between each specific sub airspace within the ARTCC field. So we developed the model, introduced the air traffic controllers, the interaction efficiency between the air traffic controllers and the flight, and the neglect efficiencies for the air traffic controller, and the interaction effort one single controllers have to put on the flights. Next slide. So in conclusion, in a global view, in our research, we want to propose a flight dispatching system under emergency that aims to optimize the air road network for the long-term efficiency, as well as satisfying the instant evacuation demands. In the local view, we want to elevate the surging air traffic complexity because of the evacuation requests. So we studied various resectorization algorithms for dynamic airspace configurations. And we proposed the data-driven method in verifying the robustness of the current existing dynamic airspace configuration algorithms to see if it could actually fit into response to those big fluctuation of the air traffic. That's it.
Thank you very much. I like the tag team approach. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Connected Cities with Smart Transportation, otherwise known as CT Smart. And Jingwen Zhao, do you want to start sharing your screen?
Yeah. There we go. Thank you, Lisa Kay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jingjing Gao, representing C2 Smart Center Connected Cities with Smart Transportation, led by New York University. And I'm going to give a quick overview of the milestone that we achieved last year, especially on 3 out of the 6 research areas that we focus, which are big data and smart cities, safety and pedestrian mobility system, and equity and accessibility. So one of the joint effort that reflects all these 3 areas last year is the C2 Smart Public COVID-19 data dashboard. As we all know, 2020 unfortunately was very different due to the pandemic. However, our researchers, like many others around the world, stepped up to the plate, and we immediately decided that we need to redirect our research and also initiate some new research collaborations with faculties from other UTCs in response to the pandemic. We create this data dashboard that includes an all-in-one mobility board to pulverize valuable open data along with visualization and analytic capabilities. We also create a sociability board that uses computer vision techniques to measure social distancing and pedestrian density, leveraging hundreds of existing public traffic cameras. We also conducted.
Yes, can I get a Americano with cream and 2 Splendid?
Oh, excuse me. I'm glad that you're ordering a good drink, but can you please mute yourself? Sorry, Jenny.
That's okay. We also conduct a nationwide mobility survey, not just for the general population, but also especially for disadvantaged populations, including over 1,000 responses received from people with disabilities, aging population, and also low-income household. And the last piece of this work, which is on the bottom right, is we recalibrated the UTC-funded NYC agent-based simulation model to predict COVID-19 impacts on transit system. And this decision support tool is also a very important part of our center's cyber-physical testbed that help agencies to evaluate and implement emerging technologies and policies. For the physical part, as you see on the right of the slide, the best demonstration is the smart urban roadway testbed in partnership with New York City Department of Transportation, where the team deployed a weighing motion system on a live section of an expressway to measure the impact of overweight trucks. And this is, I think, a perfect example of the success in UTC industry and agency collaboration that, the UTC conduct the data analysis and research, agency in charge of installation and maintenance of the sensors, and multiple industry partners also come into play with their devices and expertise. And in 2020, we also continue our commitment in transferring technologies for public goods, focusing on equity and accessibility for aging populations, people with disability, low-income households, again, and also gender disparities in travel. Some of the recent projects that supported by the center is highlighting here, that including, assisting local transit authority and piloting an accessibility subway station, exploring how wearable technologies or smartphone apps can help with visually impaired people navigating the transport system or meet the needs of seniors. And besides these equity and accessibility efforts, I would also like to highlight some of the other research efforts that we conducted last year in smart and resilience infrastructure. For example, here we developed those innovative flood sensors and self-power sensors for urban accessibility and resilience. We also continue our contribution in connected and autonomous mobility by help New York City DOT evaluating their safety performance of the connected vehicle pilot, and also having new initiative on cooperative perceptions for driving assistance. And besides that, we also have big data and smart city efforts where we help the state DOT to test piloting and statewide open source ATMS software as a part of their TISMO program. And the last slides that I want to introduce some of the new initiatives for capacity building and technology transfer. So the most exciting student initiative is what we launched last fall called the City Smart Student Learning Hub, that we provide free online workshop series to help students master with research or job ready skills. And this learning hub is taught by the student and learned by the student. And in last fall, we attracted a total of 180 attendees from 18 universities for the Learning Hub. Another exciting innovation is the CIP Common Innovation Platform that we primarily use it for project management within the center, but we also want to bring this to the next level to make it a collaborative project workspace and collaborative data sharing platform for researchers, within the consortium. And the last and good news is that we have a newly renovated space at NYU that will serve as a new permanent home for the center. I think that's it. For more details of the center, feel free to check out our poster on the Summit website and also our annual report for 2019-2020. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Wow, lots of information we're getting to hear, and it's a great preview of all of the resources that are available on the website that you had all sent in ahead of time. So thank you for that commercial as well. We're going to move to Cooperative Mobility for Competitive Megaregions, CM2, unlike C2 Smart, we're going to CM2. Sandra Carletta, would you like to share your screen?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
It's Sandra Charletta. I'm the
Sorry.
assistant, no problem. It's an alphabet of a name. I'm the Assistant Director of Administration for CM2, and I'm happy to be here today. And I just wanted to share our CM2 informational video about what we do.
Transportation shapes places. As metropolitan regions started to expand, their boundaries began to blur and megaregions have formed. Our research center, Cooperative Mobility for Competitive Megaregions, or CM2, aims to advance research, education, and technology transfer initiatives that improve the mobility of people and goods in urban and rural communities of megaregions.
So we look at the transportation-related issues in megaregions. Megaregions are defined as multiple metropolitan areas, and they are integrated rural communities. Particularly, we are interested in issues across multiple jurisdictions.
Our cutting-edge research has ignited dialogues and promoted solutions to fuel prosperity and innovation in the global economy. Each year, CM2 publishes, on average, over 50 papers, presentations, and reports to advance the conversation about the transportation needs in some of the nation's most populous centers.
My focus is very much on the legal side of megaregions. How should they be constituted? What are all the legal parameters that support them, the statutory components, potentially looking at case law. Is there a federal role? Should it be a state role? Should it be a local role? How that comes to play. And so I've been able to hire, as I said, multidisciplinary students. They're all graduated. I'm about to hire my next little batch of students, and they've all gone on to great careers.
Of course, since we intend to have a big impact, we have a strong team of partners. Our consortium partners include the University of Texas at Austin, Louisiana State University, Texas Southern University, and the University of Pennsylvania. CM2 hosts lectures, forums, exhibitions, and other events to engage stakeholders in our research.
Now I'm working on the e-scooter chips related to public transit. We want to know, because some companies mentioned that the e-scooter could be a possible solution for the first and last mile issues of public transit.
And we also have this whole new challenge coming up with all of these new disruptive technologies that are coming into play. The e-scooter issue alone for many cities, one day we didn't have these scooters and the next day we didn't, but thinking about our mobility within a mega region and then between the mega regions as well. And then obviously connected and automated vehicles and what that is going to mean for future mobility.
We employ dozens of students who go on to work at leading organizations in the field like the Federal Highway Administration, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, JetBlue, and Sasaki.
Our center encourages multidisciplinary research, education, and application. So we have people coming from different fields, not just transportation, from planning, from architecture, from engineering, of course, from landscape architecture, design, and from public policy, and from law.
We're proud of the work our researchers and students do. Please follow us on social media to stay plugged in with what we're doing.
And that's our video. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And Hillary, I almost skipped over the Freight Mobility Research Institute. Sorry about that. Aline, are you on to be able to present the information?
Yes, Dr. Kaiser is going to talk a little bit more.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Lisa, on behalf of the Freight Mobility Research Institute, I would like to thank you again. We were looking forward to see you in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, it's virtual, but again, I really appreciate it. It's a really showcase. So, Miss Aline Machado, my Assistant Research Coordinator, is going to share with you a very short video regarding the Freight Mobility Research Institute to talk to you regarding about the outstanding research group that we have in Boca Raton, Florida, at the Florida Atlantic University, and the amazing partners that they are include in this institute.
Transporting goods between buyers and sellers is vital to advance local, state, regional, and global economies. As global traffic increases and trade evolves, demand for safe and efficient freight transportation is growing exponentially. That is where Florida Atlantic University is making a difference. FAU, in partnership with 6 other universities across the nation, forms the Freight Mobility Research Institute. This Tier 1 University Transportation Center addresses critical issues that affect planning, design, operation, and safety of freight movements and logistics to strengthen our nation's economic competitiveness. Moving freight is big business. Over $2.25 trillion worth of goods are transported throughout the United States each year, with trucks being the most common mode of transport. They move raw materials and finished products between different points of the supply chain. Now imagine if cars, trucks, and traffic signals could communicate with each other and adapt their decisions in real time. This type of system could help avoid crashes, ease traffic congestion, and improve travel times by reducing stops and delays. Dr. Evangelos Kaiser and his team at the FAU College of Engineering and Computer Science are building the future of freight transportation and logistics by bridging existing technology with cutting-edge technology to solve real-world problems. Our team of faculty, staff, and students from all FMRI partner universities design innovative solutions that address numerous challenges the global transportation community faces on a daily basis, fueling growth and advancing research for a better transportation and supply chain. This is the Freight Mobility Research Institute at Florida Atlantic University.
Thank you for your time. And also now Alini is going to discuss with you one of the projects that we were accomplished in 2021 and spring 2021, and it came from the discussion with the Federal Highway and local stakeholders. Alini?
Just a second.
And Eleni, just so you know, you have about 2 minutes.
Okay. So this is the research that we have been developing over the last year, and this is based on critical urban and rural freight corridors. And this methodology offers a method for designating corridors which are defined by the FAST Act and the Florida Highway, the Federal Highway Administration. So for this project, we developed a formulation for determining if a corridor is eligible or not. And we use different weights for the different criteria, which you see in the middle. And these are some example criteria that we used. And for testing this methodology, we use the Florida as a case study. And here in the results part, I'm presenting really fast, just a small overview of the project. Here in the right, you see that we were able to, using this formulation and the programming formulation, we were able to generate a system that is very similar to the current critical urban and rural freight transportation designation. And the objective of this is to offer flexibility to manipulate the framework. It can also support existing methods for infrastructure investments. And just this research is funded by the Freight Mobility Research Institute at Florida Atlantic University. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your video and the presentation. And I'd like to invite next Hillary Nixon to talk about the Mineta Consortium for Transportation Mobility.
Thanks, Lisa Kay. So I want to provide a very brief overview about the Mineta Consortium for Transportation Mobility, and then spend a bit more time focusing on several of our workforce development programs. MCTM brings together 4 institutions that represent and support the geographic, cultural, racial, and socioeconomic diversity of the United States. The consortium is led by the Mineta Transportation Institute at San Jose State University. STSU is both a Hispanic serving institution and an Asian American and Pacific Islander serving institution located in the heart of the Silicon Valley. Howard University, a historically Black research university located in Washington, D.C., brings expertise in transportation safety and data analytics to the consortium. Navajo Technical University is the largest tribal college in the U.S. It is located in Crown Point, New Mexico, and focuses on transportation workforce development by building pathways to transportation careers through partnerships with local high schools. Our 4th partner institution is the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and their Ideas Center that focuses on safe and sustainable transportation. MCTM is an active center that focuses on researching safe, reliable, and equitable solutions that improve mobility of people and goods and strengthen the nation's economy. Since 2017, we've published over 60 reports. Our researchers have presented at more than 270 conferences and meetings, and we have led or co-sponsored 110 technology transfer and workforce development programs that have collectively engaged more than 12,000 participants. More than 190 students have been supported through our consortium, and we are a true multidisciplinary center with 57 faculty and researchers from more than 15 disciplines. Developing a transportation workforce that possesses the skills needed to plan, design, deploy, operate, and maintain transportation systems that may not even exist today presents a unique and exciting challenge for our consortium. We engage with industry partners on an ongoing basis to identify emerging career pathways, continually review and revise our programs, and look for creative ways to attract the next generation of transportation professionals. I want to take a couple minutes to highlight some of our programs. Two of our signature programs focuses on K-12 students. Our Garrett Morgan Sustainable Transportation Competition challenges teams of middle school students to develop a sustainable transportation project. Students get a chance to work on problem solving and critical thinking skills, while they also learn about transportation careers through a working transportation professional who serves as the team's mentor. This program attracts schools from across the nation and culminates in an interactive video competition each spring. Every summer, the Mineta Transportation Institute hosts a 3-week non-residential program for high school students. Students earn 3 units of transferable college credit to help launch them on a pathway to college, while they also get a chance to explore transportation careers, participate in hands-on activities, and take field trips to sites around the San Francisco Bay Area. Our students have learned about autonomous vehicles on the Google campus, taken a behind-the-scenes guided tour at the Mineta International Airport, and explored a flight simulator at San Jose State. Training and education doesn't end when someone launches a career in the transportation industry. Ongoing professional development is needed not only to ensure that the transportation workforce has the necessary skills to ensure the safety, security, reliability, and accessibility of our transportation system, but also to ensure that employees have the opportunity to take on leadership roles and move up the career ladder. 2 of our consortium programs focus on mid-career professionals. At SDSU, we offer 3 certificate programs that offer graduate level training for transportation professionals. These programs are geared towards working students with online courses offered in the evenings. Certificate students often take these classes as an entree into our Master of Science in Transportation Management program. As an anecdote, I happen to teach the capstone course in this degree program, and in a recent class, more than half of my graduating students announced that they had recently received promotions that they attributed to their graduate education. Finally, another signature program is our Mineta Leadership Academy. This program, which we offer on-site for transportation agencies and organizations, focuses on leadership training for mid-career professionals. Whether they are learning about conflict and change management, ethical decision-making, or strategic planning, participants are exposed to the leadership skills they will need to serve the transportation industry now and in the future. Thank you so much, and feel free to send me an email with any questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Hillary. It's interesting to hear about the workforce development side. Everybody is doing so many innovative things, from the research projects to workforce development. So thank you for sharing that. Stan, would you like to talk about Mobility 21?
I would be very happy to. Thank you, Lisa Kay. Is my screen shared?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you very much. So today I'm just going to give kind of a general overview of some of the energy related research that we've been doing at Mobility 21 UTC, and also some of the equity research. So as Dr. Hampshire mentioned, these are kind of priorities of the administration, and just wanted to kind of demonstrate how our UTC has been doing a lot of work in this area and some of the impact. So our University Transportation Center is based out of Carnegie Mellon University And our partners are the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, the Ohio State University, and the Community College of Allegheny County, which serves the Pittsburgh region. And our research thrust has been really about, they're listed here on the poster, but really focused on improving the mobility of people and goods, but through technology. So most of our work and research is really focused on how technology impacts these, and both from a policy side and from the technology development itself. And our research has always been focused from our previous UTC to the existing one. Our motto of Traffic 21 has been research, development, and deployment through partnerships. So we have over 165 deployment partners that work with our researchers. Each one of our research projects has to have some type of deployment partner. And one thing we also incorporated last year was that all new research projects also have to have what we call an equity partner. So the same way that we've encouraged our faculty to have community deployment partners engaged from the beginning to help make sure that the research is deployable, we want to make sure that the research is also equitable. And so we want to make sure that equity is baked in from the beginning, and that they are working with an equity partner. So we've identified about 1/3 of our deployment partners as equity partners to help our researchers with that. And so you can see on the left-hand side, we've listed multiple of our multiple research projects that have been focused on energy. And a lot of this has been funded, some by the Department of Energy as well. So to our earlier panel today, we have been seeing a lot of crossing between the two worlds of transportation and energy. And then on the, excuse me, on the right-hand side, we see a list of our equity projects as well. So you'll be able to look into these in more detail on our poster, and you'll be able to also have links to any of these on our websites. Some of the ones to highlight, though, are some of these policy initiatives that we developed. So we've actually put some of these into policy guides. And on the bottom of the screen, you'll see that with looking at alternative fuels for transit buses. Also, a report on the deep decarbonization of the transportation modes, and this was done for the National Academies. From an equity side, one of our research projects really looked at rerouting school buses for food delivery for students during COVID, which was a great community project. And then we launched a program a few years back called the Smart Mobility Challenge, where we work with the local municipalities for the local municipality to bring their community problems to our researchers, and then have our researchers apply their technology to address those problems. And so, you know, one case study was looking at last mile connections, particularly for what we see now, essential workers. And so, again, a lot of these projects are really just highlighting how our researchers are working with community partners to help develop this technology and make sure that it's developed with both deployment in mind and with equity in mind. And so these have been good programs for us. And then also, I just want to plug one program we've done lately on the education side. We just launched, and we'll start in May, our first week-long Managing Artificial Intelligence in Transportation course. So focused on mid-level managers to help them manage both the opportunities and mitigate risks of artificial intelligence disrupting transportation. So thank you, Lisa Kay. That's just a highlight on what Mobility 21's been up to.
Thanks so much, Stan. And we're going to flip-flop out of our alphabetical order for 1 minute, and then we'll go back to it. Ralph Bueller from Safety Through Disruption is going to give an update on his project.
Hello, thank you very much for allowing me to jump the line. I have to teach at 4 o'clock, and I'm getting really nervous because about 10 minutes to class. So I'm presenting the Safety Through Disruption National University Transportation Center. The guiding theme of the center is innovative research, education, and technology transfer, guided by a vision of systematically safe transportation. It was awarded in 2016. It's a consortium of the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, San Diego State University, and supported by the Virginia Department of Transport. It had been awarded for 5 years with cost shares from university, state, and private sources, and recently received a 1-year extension. The goal of the UTC is to maximize potential safety benefits of disruptive technologies through targeted research that addresses the most pressing transportation safety questions. In orange, you can see the 4 potential disruptive technologies that are the main research themes. It's automation, connectedness, transportation as a service, and big data analytics. And then around that, in the purple color, you see the 10 application areas that define the technical emphasis of safety research. And then researchers perform work under the center and leverage existing and upcoming world-class research facilities across the universities that enable robust real-world testing of advanced vehicles like the Virginia Automated and Connected Corridors, Virginia Smart Road, and the Automation Park. Safety has funded over 80 projects, leading to multiple publication and industry connections, with plans to fund more. If you follow the link there, and it's also linked on the website, you can see more of the products. For more specific details, you can contact Eric Glenn, who's the program manager for safety. I also have uploaded a poster that you can look at where we had 300 scooters by the company Spin were launched on Virginia Tech's campus, and we studied those scooters from a safety perspective. I have some slides, but I'm not going to go into detail here now because I jumped the line, and I thank you very much for pulling me ahead, and thank you.
Thank you so much. We will post again the link to the site where they can see the rest of the slides, since we have those already posted. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And for those UTCs who haven't gone yet, we are going to hang out with you. So please stay if you can. We want you to be able to review the materials that you provided. We are recording, and it will become part of the for the summit documentation. So, oh, and Jennifer, you are ready to go. I am going to just pass the mic.
I am ready to go because as with Ralph, I teach a class in 10 minutes. So I will stick with my time. I am the director of NITC, the National Institute for Transportation and Communities, which is one of the other national centers that focuses on mobility. And our partners, we're based at Portland State University, and our partners include the University of Oregon, Oregon Tech, University of Texas, Arlington, University of Arizona, and the University of Utah. And I do want to note the passing this week of Professor Marty Wax, and I was viewing his funeral service earlier before this session, and I just had to note that a lot of the work that we do at this center has been directly and indirectly affected and impacted by the work that he has done in his leadership in UTC programs, and I appreciate his legacy. As with all of the centers, there is a lot of work that we do. I am just going to highlight 5 projects that we have worked on at NITC that focus on equity and multimodal mobility. So this is just a small segment of our work. We have done research on racial bias with respect to pedestrians' experience crossing streets. This work has been led by faculty and researchers at Portland State and University of Arizona, and in addition with an alum who is now at Texas A&M. and showing that Black pedestrians have to wait longer to cross the street in marked crossings. And that work, we're seeing the impact of that work first by replication of other studies in other places in the US with similar findings, but also directly at the City of Portland's new pedestrian plan has really focused on the topic of walking while Black, and that's also influencing things like their maintenance of streetlights, etc. Another way we are addressing racial disparities in pedestrian safety, this is a project that was led at University of Arizona that used both qualitative and quantitative research to really understand differences in perspectives of walkability, and in particular differences between Mexican American and non-Hispanic white communities, and how different communities have different priorities. That research, the outcomes from that research and the findings have been used to develop this qualitative pedestrian environments data toolkit, which is available to cities and other entities to help them plan and create a more walkable environment. We have also been doing a lot of work in the area of making bike sharing more equitable over a number of different projects. A few years ago, we conducted a national study that looked at some of the barriers and issues of why particularly people of color and lower income people are not using bike share even when it's physically available. And those barriers we found really do often vary by race and income. In subsequent projects, we've looked at ways that cities and bike share systems have tried to address those inequalities, and we have turned those into a series of briefs that have been shared nationally and can help entities change with their implementation. We have done some work on making transit more accessible and equitable, and particularly this research project led by University of Utah that looked before and after bus stop improvements. And those improvements were focused on ADA accessibility and found that those improvements can increase ridership and also decrease paratransit use, which has direct implications for costs to a transit agency. And we're seeing those results being used at agencies across the country. And then the fifth project is something that is due out within the next month or so. This is one of our pooled fund projects looking at cashless fare payment systems for transit and the equity implications of that, and using data from 3 different systems in the US, finding that moving to a completely cashless system would have negative impacts on low income and particularly older transit riders. And those researchers have developed a tool for transit agencies to evaluate the different options to address those potential inequitable impacts. So with that, I will leave you with our website, and I will go teach students about data collection. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I'm glad we got you done with a couple minutes to spare. So thank you for that. Kurt Brinkerhoff, talking about Pacific Southwest region.
Yes, I think we have our director, Jen Giuliano, with us. Jen, if you're here, you may want to present.
Yes, I'm
That
here.
would be great. Thank you.
I'm here. Share screen, right? We can
Yes.
do that. Okay. I'm gonna set my timer because I don't want to go over either. Even though I'm not going off to teach a class. Good to be here. It's been a really great conference. We were up bright and early to join you this morning. So I'm the director of the Pacific Southwest Region UTC. This is a regional university transportation, so it represents the 9th census region of the US. Our partners are listed here. We are a total of 8. That includes universities, community college, and representing all but one of the states for our region. Our theme is improving the mobility of people and goods throughout the region, which is why we're here at this conference. We're one of those mobility centers. Excuse me. Here's just some overview numbers. We are a very large group. We have some very large universities, very large transportation programs. So we're well over 250,000 student enrollments at our partner universities. Nearly 6,000 students enrolled in transportation-related degree programs. 220 students enrolled in non-degree programs. We do a lot of workforce development and training, as you can see there. And we've got a total of 29 different advanced degree programs among our partners. The range of training is at the universities, all 3 levels, at the community college associate degrees, and at the state university certificate programs in professional development. We also have a very active program in K-12, primarily STEM outreach, as well as many different offerings for essentially adult learners. This is a complicated picture, but this is the, a five-minute overview here of our research. As you might imagine, the region is very diverse in terms of population, in terms of size of metropolitan areas. We've got everything from the second largest metro area in the country to extremely rural areas. So we cover the gamut, and so our research program actually reflects that breadth. So our themes are technology to improve mobility, improving resilience and protecting the environment, managing mobility in high growth areas, and improving the mobility of vulnerable populations. So these are just a couple of examples in each of those thematic areas. In managing mobility, we've been very fortunate to partner with computer science to start to use computer science techniques to improve transit performance. So these are methods that we can use to predict on-time performance of bus systems and sort of get ahead of problems in terms of on-time performance. And this research is being adopted by LA Metro. In terms of technology to improve mobility, we've done a lot of work on safety and the performance of autonomous vehicles. What you see there is just a graphic that shows that if you're going to have to make a fast move, how long does it take, depending on whether you're human or you're automated, and so on. We have done a great deal of work on resilience, particularly with our colleagues at University of Hawaii. And much of what they're doing has to do with mitigation and managing roads infrastructure as the effects of climate change increase. And much of that information is being pushed out through the local departments of transportation. And finally, on the last topic, here's an example of gentrification going now to the major metropolitan area. A big question is always, when we invest in transit-oriented development, we make areas more attractive, and therefore we raise land values. Who leaves, and what is the implication for that? We have a very broad set of engagement activities. The first one is what I'll call technical assistance for industries and agencies. And this is sort of direct research, applied research that meets the needs of our customers. So we have been very much involved, for example, in implementation of the California Sustainable Freight Action Plan. And also we've been involved in supporting the LA County SAFE program. We have a number of media and information venues to provide advisement for policymakers through hearings, workshops, collaborations, as well as invited conferences. We're very proud of our e-magazine that we call Transfers. The purpose of Transfers is to provide research results in ways that are comprehensible to non-technical audiences. I'm glad that Jennifer brought up Marty Wax. Marty Wax was one of our senior editors on this magazine and was one of the big promoters for us to get it started. So this is one more thing that's in part his legacy. We also do an awful lot of engagement with industry as well as public agencies. And I just want to give a quick shout out to our upcoming event, which is the International Urban Freight Conference in October. I believe this is the last slide. For workforce development, we also have a very large program of workforce development. Part of it at Pima College. We, believe it or not, have a training program for drivers of automated vehicles. So the driver is not going away nearly as soon as everybody is predicting. And then we have just recently developed a Freight Academy, a 2-week intensive training on freight and supply chains. I'm going to skip that because I'm going over time. And I just want to say thank you and glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And I so appreciate you keeping track of your own time. I hate to have to interrupt people, so thank you for that. And thank you for the information that you are presenting. For the UTCs that haven't presented yet, if you have time commitments that you need to be shifted, please let me know. I know I heard from Mansouri that she needs to get to class as well. So we are going to move the order to have her go next. And she is with the Urban Mobility and Equity Center. Would you like to start to share?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are from Urban Mobility and Equity Center, and we are a consortium tier 1 University Transportation Center, Morgan State University, and our partners are Virginia Tech and University of Maryland College Park. I'm showing, mine is very brief. I'm showing you 3 videos back to back of 3 selected projects that we have been doing. Let's see that.
Okay, there's the video.
Okay.
But there's no sound. Oh, there it comes.
New cars today have a variety of systems to help drivers, including warning systems that alert them to something that needs their attention. They're the first wave of connected vehicles. But how will drivers react to these new warning signs, and how quickly? After all, they ignore some other signs. We used a full-size driving simulator to study drivers' reactions. Some 93 participants drove a total of 186 experiments. We created a road network of the downtown Baltimore area, which most participants were familiar with. We tested systems that warn drivers about pedestrians, red lights, forward collisions, and their speed approaching a curve. We also examined takeover reaction time. How long does it take for a car to take control if a driver isn't reacting, or for a driver to take back control when the incident is over? We measured braking, steering, throttle control, and changes in speed. We found that forward collision warnings and pedestrian warnings worked well. Drivers braked earlier and more aggressively to prevent a crash. But curve speed warning didn't slow anyone down. Drivers pretty much ignored it. When it came to takeover reaction time, we found that the amount people drive, their age, and how familiar they are with this technology influence their reaction times. Biking is an increasingly popular mode of transportation, but crowded downtown streets have no room to add bike lanes. Some cities have added dedicated bus lanes to speed transit, which should be empty when a bus isn't using them. Can bikes safely share these lanes with buses? If so, what types of lanes are needed and where do the problems arise? We tethered drones equipped with high-definition video cameras above 9 shared bus and bike lanes in downtown Baltimore, Maryland, covering a total of 5.5 miles. We collected 6 hours of footage at each location, classified every vehicle in the bus lanes, and analyzed their interactions. The shared lanes worked well. We analyzed hours and hours of footage and found slightly more than 1,300 possible interactions among vehicles, and of those, only 5.7% involved a possible interaction between a bus and a bike. In fact, buses waited behind bikes instead of trying to overtake them, and the bikes did not delay buses. The real problem turned out to be cars parked illegally in the lanes, causing buses and bikes alike to swerve into traffic.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was our presentation.
That's great. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. We're going to next have up Dr. Salon from the T-SCORE Transit Serving Communities Optimally, Responsibly, and Efficiently Center.
This is Candace Brakewood. I'm presenting for T-SCORE. I'm not sure if you're moving around the list. I'm second to last. I'm happy to go now, though.
Okay, why don't you go ahead? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen then. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Candace Brakewood. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Tennessee and an associate director of the University Transportation Center called Transit, Serving Communities Optimally, Responsibly, and Efficiently. The motivation for this transit-focused center is what you see in this chart. You're looking at nationwide transit ridership, bus, rail, as well as total over the last 30 years. And after steady increases in the late 90s and 2000s, we've seen gradual decreases in ridership, particularly over the last 7 to 8 years. And as you are all well aware, in the last year, massive drops. So we're talking 50, 60, even more percentage decreases from 2019 to 2020 across all modes of transit. So really this motivation has led us to a vision to understand strategic visions to guide public transit into a sustainable and resilient future. And we want to equip local planners with tools really to help them gain ridership. This is a new UTC. It was funded just last year and is on an 18-month, so very short timeline. It is a tier 1 and it has 4 partner universities. So it is led by Georgia Tech. I'm representing the University of Tennessee, and our other partners are the University of Kentucky and Brigham Young. Just to show you the faces of some of the faculty involved, I do want to note I'm representing our director today. Her name is Carrie Watkins, and she is from Georgia Tech. But there are numerous faculty involved at all of the partner universities. And of course, I must mention our many students that are involved both at the undergrad as well as graduate level. But I'll spend just the last 2 minutes or so talking about our research plan for the T-Score Center. And it's a 3-step research plan that you see in front of you, starting with strategy generation and then with 2 parallel research tracks and finishing with tech transfer. So very briefly, starting with strategy generation, we're conducting a series of key informant interviews. So really thought leaders in public transit at transit agencies, private companies, at research organizations, et cetera, to try to understand different strategies that transit agencies and providers need to consider, including things like the important role of transit as a social service to provide equitable access to mobility for those with low income or mobility or disabilities. To consider things like high volume transit in capacity constrained quarters and dense urban areas, et cetera. Many other strategies are being considered, and particularly looking at recovery for the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, we have 2 parallel research project tracks. I am leading the one on the left, which is the community analysis track. And what I mean by community analysis is we're working very closely with transit agency partners and local planners to do actual ridership analyses, conduct surveys, et cetera. So there are 4 distinct projects. I'll just mention one. The second project is to look at the latest nationwide ridership trends in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. So really diving into what has happened over the last year nationwide. And on the other parallel track, which is led by Greg Earhart, a professor at the University of Kentucky, they are conducting a multimodal optimization and simulation project that's really aimed at developing an analytical tool for local transit planners to consider different scenarios. So how can they optimize their traditional fixed route transit, but also integrate things like new on-demand and microtransit options. I will note, of course, they're working very closely with local partners and have 2 test cities, San Francisco and Salt Lake City, where they'll be implementing this. And last, to conclude, a key piece of our work is technology transfer and really helping our local partners, local transit agencies with their planning and policy decisions. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to represent the T-Score UTC. I've included the link to our website here, and feel free to send me an email if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a lot of information. Thank you for the presentation. Next up, we are going to go to TOMNET, and Dr. Salon is going to be presenting for us.
Great, thanks so much. Let's see. I am not quite as quick as Jennifer Dill was earlier on the screen share, but here we go. So slideshow. So I'm taking a little bit of a different approach representing TOMNET, and we're actually just going to talk very, very quickly about one big project that we've been doing over the last year. And our big question in this particular project is how will the COVID-19 pandemic affect the future of transport, which is something that I think Dr. Hampshire referenced and what a lot of people are thinking about. So we thought you might be interested in what we're finding. I'll say that this particular project is funded by a whole bunch of, a variety of funders. The TOMNET UTC is just one of many, many funders. So it's a little bit of a different presentation, but I'll be really fast and hopefully you'll find it interesting. So as we know, we've been making a lot of big changes to our daily lives over the past year due to the pandemic. And so our big question is, will some of these new behaviors stick? We conducted a national survey to find out, and we call it the COVID Future Survey. The project has a website, covidfuture.org, so you can head over there and check out more details if you're interested, and download our data if you'd like to use it in your own research. This is the research team. I won't go through who they are, but just so you can see a variety of faces. The survey included questions about employment, status, working and studying, shopping and dining, daily transport, some attitudinal data, some demographics, and there was a question about sort of social network connectivity in your community. It took between 15 and 30 minutes. We collected data. Our first wave of the survey was collected between mid-April and mid-October. We collected the second wave this winter and just finished up at the end of March, and we're planning our third wave to start in a few weeks. We weighted the sample based on these kinds of variables, and here are some just kind of key results. So the question is about like what is going to stick, and one of the things that we find really will stick according to our data is working from home. You can see that working from home frequently, at least a few times a month, has gone up quite a bit and is not projected to go down very much from the actual level during the pandemic. If you look at even more frequent working from home, the same basic patterns persist, although the percentages are a bit lower. Car commuting, what's interesting to note here is that the total percentage of people who say that car is their main commute mode is the same, more or less, but the everyday commuters are going down largely because some people are working from home some of the time. So we are projecting a drop in car commuting, not because people are switching to other modes, but because some people are switching to working from home part of the time. Looking at dining and shopping, I'll let you guys look at the slides later. I won't go through all of these, but if you want to check out the slides, they are uploaded to the website. There's just a couple more here. This one is something I wanted to talk about just in a minute because it's of interest to mobility. A lot of people talk about biking and walking. We find that especially among people who were regular users a few times a week or more pre-pandemic, they are planning to do these activities even more in the post-pandemic period. And especially for pedestrians walking, even people who were not regular users before, this green part of the bar is people who said they wanted to do it more post-pandemic. So we're seeing potentially a very large increase in non-motorized transportation interest and hopefully actually use. And you can download our data at covidfuture.org and use it for yourself and see what kinds of things you can find there. And we encourage you to do that. And thank you for listening. You can also contact me at my email address if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. And when you were talking about the waves that were happening, I was just thinking about back to the waves of COVID. And so it's interesting it's related to the research that you are doing as well. So thank you very much.
I didn't mean that, but yeah. Thanks so much for letting me present that.
You're so welcome. Okay, Cole Kopka, you've been waiting very patiently. Oh, look, he's already sharing his screen. All right, take it away.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa K. My name is Cole Kopka. I'm the Assistant Director of PacTrans. We're the Region 10 University Transportation Center. We're housed at the University of Washington. We have 6 consortium partners along with ourselves in the Pacific Northwest. And our mission is to provide data-driven solutions for the diverse mobility challenges of people and goods in the Pacific Northwest. A kind of unique characteristic about our region is that while we have a number of large urban metropolitan areas, we also have some of the most rural and isolated communities in the country. And then with that, we have chosen to define mobility in a pretty broad sense using 4 subcategories of accessibility, reliability, safety, and efficiency. And so what I thought I would do is just give you a snapshot of a few different projects that kind of across these 4 different subcategories and that also affect urban populations and rural populations. So this first project is looking at commercial delivery vehicle envelopes on urban streets. This group of researchers partnered with a number of different delivery companies and tried to develop some uniform guidelines to make those envelopes safer for both the drivers as well as other pedestrians and road users. And then with those guidelines they implemented them in a bicycle simulator to actually test different size vehicle envelopes against other road users and the safety implications of those. The second one is really focused on curb management and the technologies and methodologies that it will require to not only gain the data we need to better understand what's happening at the curb, but then also looking forward into better managing those curb spaces. We have a lab that developed a sensor that has been deployed in the city of Bellevue, Washington, along with a few private companies to do a little friendly competition, both from the perspective of the hardware, but then also the algorithms that were built for sensing and tracking curb space use. This third project is a PI has developed an open source application for crowdsourcing pedestrian infrastructure data, specifically for the purposes of accessibility within the disabled community. And then a fourth project in certain places in Alaska, when water bodies freeze over, they actually become the primary transportation infrastructure for those people. But obviously there are significant safety concerns when using frozen lakes and rivers as transportation infrastructure. And so we have a PI who's been basically developing a standardized methodology for testing the thickness and strength of ice to decrease some of those safety concerns. And then the last thing I wanted to plug quickly is we've been working for a few years on developing a workforce development institute. And in February, we officially launched with our first course in partnership with the Washington State Department of Transportation. That course was on the MUTCD. And so we are in the process of developing a number of other courses and working with our agency and industry partners to help them with their continuing education needs. So that's me. I think that was probably well under time, but we're getting toward the end, so short and sweet. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Cole. And boy, that image of that car sticking out of the ice is gonna not leave me anytime soon. That's pretty frightening. Oh my gosh. And David Cack, bring it home for us, please, and tell us about the Small Urban, Rural, and Tribal Center on Mobility.
You bet. Well, thank you all for sticking through this. So very quickly, as we say, three fierce partners to make a UTC. So Montana State University, the Bobcats, the Bison at North Dakota State University, and the Eagles at Eastern Washington University. So we have a combination of experience of national and tier 1 UTCs. Eastern Washington was one of the regional tribal technical assistance program entities. So we know the areas we're dealing with, and as we talked about underserved populations, certainly the American Indian, Native American, and as they are sovereign nations, again, how they interact with the states they're in, the feds, counties, and nearby communities. So some of the things we're doing, it's really, you know, what's going on in urban areas and other areas, and how do we make that happen in rural and tribal areas. Obviously, when you talk about rural and tribal areas, you're also talking a lot about federal lands, whether that's U.S. Forest Service, Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, other federal lands. And so how do we look at the intersection of those transportation networks as well? Just 3 quick projects we want to highlight. We go into very small communities and say, is public transportation feasible? Lebanon, Missouri was a community of about 15,000 people, and talking through that. Would public transportation be feasible? What would it look like? How do you start it? How do you keep it going? When we talk about being able to get to those things you need. So how accessible are hospitals on different federal or Indian reservations, Native American reservations? So looking again at some of those spatial issues when you're out in the rural areas, you know, how close is that medical facility to you? And one of the other things that we've done is looking at the economic benefits of rural and small urban transit. So if you can go to political leaders and say, for every dollar you invest in public transportation, you're getting $2.5, $3.5, $5 back on those returns, it's important for them to see that, to see, okay, if I invest this money, I'm going to see that return. And one of the things we found out in this report was one of those greatest benefits actually comes based on the percentage of trips you're giving to medical services. And the higher percentage that is, actually the greater benefits that accrue. And so as we've talked a lot about today is getting that data and being able to share that, and what does that mean? And if we're looking at this large investment in infrastructure, will we see a payback in that? So as we've talked some today, you know, really looking at moving from that single occupancy vehicle car to carpooling, van pooling, public transportation, biking and walking. So, you know, moving away from that car culture, as we've talked, what does that mean as far as equity? Because we know it's expensive to own and operate a car. So how do we think about those forms? And certainly, you know, as we're talking about, there's lots of things coming in the future, from an unmanned aerial taxi to a lot of other options that are out there. So again, where is that technology going to take us, and how do we make it work in small urban, rural, and tribal areas? So appreciate all the work Lisa K has put into this, and to make these opportunities to share available, and lots of contact information. As Lisa K said, all this will be on the Summit website. So appreciate if you have any questions to let me know. So thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, David. And I love that your presentation kind of ended on like future options of transportation. So that was really interesting. I just want to make sure, quick call out, that I didn't miss anyone. Okay, hearing none. I just want to thank everybody again for attending. Stan, I think, is going to wrap us up.
Thank you, Lisa K and Joy, for all your work in managing this, the logistics of this, and the whole summit. This has been really great. My first one was 2015, and I'm looking forward though to going back in person, especially with Cole's background of the cherry blossoms. You know, we need to get back to DC for cherry blossom season. March 31st, 2022, we are keeping our fingers crossed that we will be physically together in DC under some cherry blossoms during this summit. And thanks to all the panelists, and especially to Dr. Robert Hampshire and all of our friends at USDOT in the UTC program, and thanks to Caesar for presenting. And but most importantly, thanks to all the UTCs for all of your participation in this. This is by far the most participation we've had in any of the summits. And the whole point of this is to make sure that the UTCs are engaging with the partners in the real world. So to all of our real world partners, again, 120 different organizations being represented. We increase this a few more each year to make sure that we're trying to capture a diverse group of community engaged partners, and we really appreciate your participation. So thanks again to everybody, and we look forward to doing this in person next year. We may have a hybrid model, but your participation really made this virtual one a success. So thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.